retail. I just have this on the agenda because I think we need to keep the discussion going, and we have to set up some public hearings about it. And in talking with Tony Phillips, our social services director, he suggested that rather than having a meeting where we get pros and cons of back and forth and that kind of a debate, we should have a meeting that's focused on the positives associated with it, whatever they are, and the negatives, a separate meeting with the negatives, whatever those may be, so that we can listen to a clear understanding of both sides rather than a back and forth and the trouble of trying to maintain the focus during the meeting, because I think we may have people passionate on both sides.
Yeah,
I just put it on the table for discussion.
I think we will have people passionate on both sides, but at the same time, I think that it might be better for us to have what you just described, one meeting pro, one meeting.
Or a couple pro and a couple
But I
opposed,
think
pro.
in terms of the public viewing, a lot of people are gonna view once, and they should get
A fuller picture?
Oh, they may not tune in to hear both sides.
Right. yeah, that's what I'm.
Well, I guess the other thing I would say is, so we can have various experts, and I know, I guess they're not here, but, ECDC did one.
Right.
I know, Representative Berger Javallo had done one. So that's good and helpful, and we can all do research. I'd given you some articles that I had found.
Yes.
I'm very curious to hear from the people who are passionate,
Right.
right, and what they're thinking, why they're passionate, one way or the other, because you certainly, it's like anything else, you hear the loudest voices, you hear the handful of loud voices, and we've heard, on both sides. I literally have no idea if the town is, all, mostly in favor, and there's a couple people who are against, or vice versa. It's very tough to tell, so.
The ultimate is, do we put a question on a referendum? And does it go on during the budget referendum?
I think though, I think we should hear from the public, definitely, but we're not hearing from like the stakeholders, maybe the police officers, or the youth commission, or the prevention
That's all of
council.
them to be thinking about it, the prevention council or CASA, Western Connecticut, I have an idea where they're gonna come down, I'm not sure. The prevention council, we did September was recovery month, and there was a vigil held at the tent up at the Venus building. And I said, one of the things we need to hear from the RPC is your thoughts on retail cannabis in Ridgefield and cultivation. Because you're allowed, under state law, a license for each one, and as long as you have a population center of 25,000 people. So they can issue one retail and one cultivator license. So do we want one, not the other? Do we want both? Do we want neither? All
But
of that.
are we getting these people together to talk, like, and then present something, or it's just gonna be a catch-as-catch-can who comes to the public hearing, or are we targeting the
No,
answers?
I would like to get a couple of presentations.
Yeah, I mean, I
Over the
think the
years, we've had a lot of
should.
different people,
Yeah.
experts
High
in the
school?
area. There's a Dr. Hill out of the Boston area that's been at the Lear Center. He's a researcher. I haven't seen him in years. I don't know where he's at relative to this topic. At the last time, which, as I said, was 7, 8 years ago, it was, no, but there's a lot more research to be done.
Yeah.
A lot of that's been done now, and from a medical perspective, they're out there and people are using it medically.
Oh, and it
Unquestionably.
is very valuable medically. The question.
And we'll hear a lot of those stories.
Yeah,
Yeah.
At the same time, we'll hear the stories from the people who feel, I don't know, no names, but one person said during the meeting that he had a relative that did get addicted to marijuana, and he lost them eventually. That was at a P&Z hearing on that, I heard that. So there are gonna be a lot of different stories.
well, because, there are people, Rudy, medically also, I guess, but, medically is fine, but when you think about people smoking and driving, and there are no, there's no way to determine.
Chief Kreitz said they can be sitting, someone can pull up to a light and be smoking an e-cigarette, vaping, or just a joint, I guess. They are not allowed to arrest that person. But a person driving up, sitting there with a can of beer, you're under arrest. And that's the contradiction that he feels doesn't make any sense.
Right,
Because it will impair your driving
yes.
either way.
Well, I think we should just do an action plan then. If we have,
Okay.
if we wanna do a task force, we should gather a task force to meet and talk about it and get it, and then come back and report to us. I don't think we wanna hear piecemeal people coming in, listening, and then making our own opinions, and then
I
having.
kinda do, I wanna
I
have a
do.
public hearing to have people
Well, then, and
come in.
having, well, like Chief Kreitz and the Prevention Council and all, I
Well,
mean,
we can get their input, whether they attend the meeting or not, I'm sure they would, but I definitely want input from the RPC, from the Ridgefield Community Coalition, against alcohol and substance abuse, from the Youth Commission, from various organizations in town that go well beyond just
The
Our
Economic
world.
Development
Right.
Commission.
regionally.
Yeah, no,
well, and I think we are gonna have to do this as a separate, separate meeting. I
What we
think-
have to do, I think, is a
Oh,
series
yeah,
of
I think it's
separate.
a series
yeah.
of,
I think that we need to
It's not,
do
it's
that.
not these meetings.
No,
Yeah,
it's not.
No, it's a series
No,
of separate.
it's not, put it on our agenda, we'll have it as an agenda item.
No,
you
Absolutely
can't,
not.
no.
We need to separate and dedicate the time to it.
Right.
But that may be a weeknight, it could be a Saturday, and, we have, what did the P and Z Commission approve? 1 year?
Moratorium,
We have-
1 year.
So
But
it'd
we,
be
we do
next
intend to
September.
act on it quicker than a year if we can. Well, obviously, we're deferring to you at the
Right.
moment to
Right.
lead the fundamental question here, but
The
we would like,
policy.
we would like to, really, if you, if you,
If
the
we
town
say
decide that it's
we're
to be
okay with it.
allowed, then we would want to act quickly to provide the correct zoning regulations to allow it. So in other words,
Are you
if you said
expecting,
that would
is the
yes.
commission expecting, because you can either do it by land use or by ordinance, is
Right.
what the law says.
That's correct. Okay.
And in there it says you can regulate where, times of operation, et cetera.
Right.
So what I hear you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, and I think Becky said this, was that the Board of Selectmen should have a referendum, public hearings
Right.
referendum, all of that, to decide whether the town is a thumbs up or thumbs down. Then send it back to zoning to decide where and hours of operation.
That's exactly the
Right.
way I understand it also, and certainly, the commission's gonna change a lot in 6 weeks' time after the election. But I would say that I think the majority of the people that are going to be on the commission.
Yeah, because I was confused that night, based on the previous meeting, there was a lot of different opinions
Right,
that came out.
but I think as you said, Joe, just reiterating it, I think the first question that the Planning and Zoning Commission does not feel it's our place, but we realize that we could do it. We don't think it's the appropriate place for us to manage the
policy.
fundamental question of whether or not the community wants cannabis establishments. We feel that that's a broad enough topic, and what we don't want to do
Yes or no?
is have a government, between two parts of government, we're refereeing a conversation, so are you. So
You
by
know,
enacting the moratorium, my understanding as a member of the commission, is that we're saying to you, the Board of Selectmen, we would like you to first champion the question of whether or not the community wants to allow
Mhm.
cannabis establishments.
That's a policy,
it's
right?
both.
If the community, you can enact an ordinance that prohibits them entirely. You can enact an ordinance that allows all or allows some subset of them, as you
Right,
mentioned, there's more
okay.
than one type, right?
Right.
Once you make that decision, and the community makes that decision, then we feel it is in the Planning and Zoning Commission's role to help define
Mhm.
where, when, signage, and other traditional land use, planning, zoning type activity.
I've
We
heard
can then-
yes, I've heard no, and I've heard not in town, somewhere else.
Right,
And I think pretty much the town, for as many people you ask, you may end up with a pretty common split between those three.
Yeah, I was talking to someone recently who is not, you know, a user or anything like that, but felt that it's legal and it's here and we should be having a retail establishment in town and not leave the tax dollars on the table.
Right.
Yep.
But when you say in
So-
town, we're 34 square miles.
Right. They're
Right,
in
so
town.
we could enact
Right.
a zoning regulation that would prohibit the operation of a cannabis establishment, and as
In the
Rudy-
central business
as Rudy
district.
said, that's not just retail, but that's cultivation, and by the way, just to actually expand on Rudy's point, there's actually 11 different license types,
Yes.
not just 2. And it includes manufacturing, packaging, delivery. So a cannabis establishment, as an example, could include a delivery business, which might just want to be located in Ridgefield.
But we
it's-
cannot prohibit
We can't prohibit delivery.
the transport of cannabis in an amount up to 3 ounces that has to be concealed and put in the glove box or the trunk.
All right, so we should,
But
are we?
once you decide whether or not you want to allow it, sorry to interrupt, once you decide whether or not you want to prohibit it altogether or prohibit some subset of these establishments, then planning and zoning can step in and say, this is where it should go from a zoning standpoint, where in the community. And as Rudy said, if we detect in your conversations that the community doesn't want it in the CBD, the community doesn't want it near schools, that is possible to regulate that via zoning. And we would certainly help you do that once that conversation.
So we
is
need to get the ball rolling.
We need to, yeah.
I would like to get input from the already existing boards we have.
Why don't you send a letter,
Yep, I can do that.
send a letter, on
Is
behalf
everyone
of,
else in agreement
on
with that?
behalf of us, asking them to discuss it themselves and come up with,
Well, then, and then to
Participate.
participate in a,
right,
an act,
well, to have a
Forum, right.
representative, I mean, you
a
don't,
forum.
yeah, to have a representative present in a forum.
So what are we looking at end of October, beginning of November? We're gonna go
I don't
through?
have any idea right now. I'd have
Well,
to
I mean,
look.
if we're
I
gonna
know
have it
there's
on
a
the
lot of
agenda
end of
every week
October.
until we get a we
Well,
should really
meet
make a
again
decision
on
on
the
that.
20th.
Right.
So at that point, I will have spoken to a couple of people, but I don't know if we'll have letters from everyone.
No, I don't think we will,
Because
I
they may
think,
have already had their monthly meeting.
well, that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
what I was getting at. I mean,
Yeah.
so we're looking probably at November, and then we're
Yeah.
gonna start looking into the holidays. So is that our mindset, that we're gonna try to do this in
Well,
November?
I'm looking at in the spring.
To
Oh.
To be
yes,
very honest with you, we have until September. If we want to put a referendum question on the budget
Hmm.
in May, the second Tuesday in May, we may want to do that. So that would be, to me, the first time we would have an opportunity to ask the people in town at a referendum for their opinion.
Yeah, but are we gonna, is that a binding opinion? Are we gonna ask their
Well,
opinion, and they're
I
gonna say
would-
yes, and then we're all gonna say no, or they're gonna say no, and we're
If
gonna
the
say
results
yes?
come back no, I wouldn't say yes, we should do it.
Right,
Not me, I mean,
Well, but
that's
how
But I
what
mean,
I'm
but your
putting
point
in.
is it, well, what if it's mixed? What if it's, you know, I mean, you can make it very confusing,
1900
but.
yes and 1600 no.
It's yes.
Okay then, so then we're just
That's how
going
we
ahead
work
and,
government, it's the majority rule.
that's fine, I understand, so it's basically gonna be a vote up or down on whether we're gonna have cannabis in town.
Well, we don't have to do that, I
We
guess.
don't know, I'm just saying that's an option.
That's
all.
right, that's,
Okay.
I don't wanna get to the point where we're already talking about what the vote could be.
Yeah,
That's well
don't quote
ahead.
those numbers.
That's well
because this is
ahead.
my point about trying to get public input, because if we get a lot of public input, we may get, again, it may be very much weighted to one side or the other.
It could be,
I will say, like,
where you don't even need a referendum.
that's my point, because I will say, I was not a super supporter of this, I didn't feel maybe as strongly as some of the people I've talked to. But, sort of like the person you spoke to, Maureen, the more people I've talked to, the feeling is like, this is here, it's coming, it's probably not far off, that it's a national, issue, and it's not just a state issue. You know, why don't we just, get on with it? So I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I'm just hearing more and more of that, so.
There is a segment of our community that.
that feels that way.
Yeah. But again, so I think through the public forums and input, if if we're finding that, yeah, there's a lot of controversy, a lot of people feel, and again, a lot of people feel very strongly on either side, great, let's go do the referendum. However, if, you know, preponderance of the people are coming back and saying, I'm, you know, one side or the other, you know, we can hear that and we can make some decisions.
So it'll
But
be
the
a process.
referendum will be the most universal as far as reaching people, I guess,
I mean,
right?
I
Yeah.
hope so, but we don't get a big turnout.
We
for
don't,
budget
we don't,
referendum.
but
Well, we might for this one.
It could, that'd be great, maybe that's a reason to put it on. Which is just kind of a
So you'll
sad
write a
statement
letter,
in of
and
itself.
then, so then we'll start gathering the information from the commissions, and then we'll start having
Begin-
forums.
I think as we begin getting input and have more information, it'll make our decision relative to process easier and easier.
Right, okay, great.
COVID update,